Hey everyone, it is time for season 5 of NiCHE Conversations, which is incredible. When I started this endeavor in 2019, I didn't really imagine doing this for 5 years, but it's been really fun. And I've got to 65 interviews under my belt at this point. And today we are going to be joined by Brandon Cordeiro, who I'm going to invite in right now. But we are going to be talking about nuclear waste today. Hello, Brandon.
Hey Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to NiCHE Conversations.
Hi, good to be here.
I'm Jessica DeWitt, one of the editors here at the network in Canadian History and Environment. And this is season 5, which is really exciting for me. And today we are joined by Brandon Cordeiro. Do you want to tell us about yourself?
Hi, I'm Brandon Cordeiro. I guess, an environmental historian currently working at Lakehead University. Most of my research focuses on Canada and the nuclear age.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much the bombs and stuff, but I look more at nuclear energy, nuclear power, and just kind of its influence on the environment, on peoples, on communities throughout Canada.
Awesome. So, invited you here today to take a look back at an article you wrote for us in 2022. It's Between a Rock and a Hard Place, the Nuclear Waste Issue in Northern Ontario. And this was part of our Radiation in Canada series that Blake Butler and Joshua McGuffey edited. And I personally keep a lot of tabs on what's going on in environmental justice in Canada. And I've noticed even an uptick in the signs for nuclear waste in Ontario and images that I'm seeing coming out of the region. So I wondered first if you could just tell us, what is the nuclear waste issue in Northern Ontario and how has it changed or developed in the last 2 years since you wrote the piece?
Yeah. So basically, there is a proposal right now on what we plan to do with nuclear waste in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Um, since about 2002, there has been an organization known as Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And they were mandated by the government to kind of figure out a solution to this growing nuclear waste problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, originally in the 1970s, this is when the discussion of nuclear waste first came into kind of existence in Canada. And it was basically the same plan, deep geological repository, find communities, hopefully within the Precambrian Shield, just because it is such a solid foundation to bury stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they were looking for communities in the 1970s and a little bit into the 1980s. Many of those candidates at that time were communities in Northern Ontario, Northeastern Ontario, and Northwestern Ontario. Um, by 1981, the federal government with the Ontario government decided to put a moratorium on finding a permanent location for these sites. Now, in the 1990s, there were environmental assessment panels that went across Canada, kind of examining, reapproaching the issue, but also examining kind of public consent to this proposal. Um, their decision in 1998, the Seaborn panel came to the decision that while they believed that it was a sound technical plan, the government had not received kind of the public support necessary to go forward with this project, and that happened in 1998. So in 2002, the government creates the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. Their sole purpose is basically they are mandated simply to figure this out, to find a community that would be willing to go through this process. Now they have changed, their process and how they are kind of achieving their goals. They've shifted over to adaptive phased management, which is a model that is similarly being used in Finland right now. Finland is one of the first countries kind of experimenting with deep geological repositories. So we are very much modeling a lot of that Finnish kind of approach to kind of developing these programs. Now, in recent years, the NWMO has really been pushing to complete or to begin this project. Again, they went back to communities all across Canada, but specifically in Ontario. And we are now down to 2 communities who are still on this list. One is in Southern Ontario, the other is in Northern Ontario, in Northwestern Ontario. So in Southern Ontario, South Bruce is still in the runnings. Now, again, Bruce has a history with nuclear energy. There are big power plants within the area. It would contain it a little bit more, but obviously it's a little closer to urban populations. It's not as isolated. The second, the other remaining choice is Ignace, Ontario. Ignace is about 150 kilometers west of Thunder Bay. Um, and they are aggressively proposing this amongst the community right now. Um, in May of this year, the community of Ignace did a referendum to vote on the situation. Um, it's a small community. Only 1,000. There were only 1,000 eligible voters in the referendum, but 640 of those residents agreed at the proposal. Now, again, they are one community among many in the area in northwestern Ontario, but arguably they're the ones who are kind of going forward with this project. And finally, in July of this year, Ignace Town Council finally voted in favor of hosting the site. So they have officially, on their end, agreed to at least move forward with this project. Nuclear Waste Management Organization won't make their final decision until the end of this year.
Interesting.
So yeah, within the, I mean, especially in the last 6 months, it's been our local news. It seems like every couple weeks that word nuclear waste pops up, in one way or another. But things have been moving quickly this summer. Yeah,
That's interesting. I wonder, like, just to build off of that, a lot of the anti-nuclear waste things that I'm seeing are at like Grassy Narrows protests and other protests. So I'm wondering, like, is there really a major? I imagine there's a major pushback from local Indigenous groups to this decision by these towns, these communities.
So there are settler groups as well who do have concerns, environmental concern groups. But again, one of the major concerns is coming from Indigenous communities, particularly those Indigenous communities in the area. Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation will be making their vote. They also have some say in this as well because they are a little bit more in proximity to the proposed project. But other communities who don't have as much say in the project are voicing their opinions. Again, Grassy Narrows, is staunchly against this project. For those of you who don't know, in the 1960s and 1970s, the paper mills in the Dryden area were just pouring mercury, dumping mercury into the river, burying it kind of in all these places across northwestern Ontario, and it was getting into the water system. Poisoned the English Wabigoon water system, which is the water source that Grassy Narrows gets their water from, and I mean, the environmental and health concerns that have happened in the last 50, 70 years in Grassy Narrows. It has one of the highest amounts of mercury poisoning in the world. And again, and they don't want to relive those experiences because they understand just what can happen when things happen to the watershed, and it spreads from there.
Absolutely. And so potentially just compound so many different environmental issues in the region. And I appreciate that you mentioned that it's being modeled after Finnish strategies. And I encourage people who are watching to check out the Nuclear Natures series that NiCHE published, which is all about the European aspects of nuclear waste, etc. We published that in January and February this year. It's just as an aside, cool connection. So this isn't, an individual, as we're seeing with you talking about Grassy Narrows, etc. This isn't a lone issue. It's a part of a deeper and much longer history of the politics of development in Northern Ontario. And I wonder if you could just touch upon what that means and what that is.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I got into this to begin with. I'm big into kind of, discussions about resource industries, about the politics of development. I'm a staunch Northerner. And there are differences between Northern Ontario and Southern Ontario. And historically, Northern Ontario's history and its culture and our economies are connected to those politics of development. The expansion of wealth and capital pushing further into Northern Ontario, opening these concession roads, mills and lumber yards and hydroelectricity and mining, you know, across Northern Ontario. It's single industry communities who revolve around resource extraction.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when we talk about those politics of development, capital and resources are leaving the north. But it never, it becomes much more difficult for those resources and that capital to stay within the north. So there's always this imbalance. There are these inequalities that just come with living in remote and rural areas. It's that hinterland metropolis connection that
Mm-hmm.
is so deep in kind of Canadian history.
Yeah,
Um,
go ahead.
and I mean, we deal with the environmental concerns of this, of these types of resource extraction industries.
Mm-hmm.
People's health and their labor is influenced, or their health is influenced by their labor and their environments and all this stuff. Now, particularly, in the north, we have seen massive deindustrialization over the last generation. Paper mills are closing. These small communities, these single industry communities, they're on the verge of disappearing because the industries are gone. Globalization has happened. These towns aren't as necessary to kind of the global economies as they used to be. Um, and that is the ultimate crux of this nuclear waste issue. Nuclear Waste Management Organization is offering this community, an opportunity for industry, for for revitalization. And there are many people in Ignace, who are seeing what's happening, and they see this as a way to kind of to survive. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this goes back to the risks that are involved with taking on these industries. These are the larger questions that people and communities and other communities in the region also have to discuss when we're I can understand why people in Ignace want this project, especially the jobs that it's going to create in terms of the construction of this site and then the management of this nuclear waste for hundreds of years. Um, it's
Mm-hmm.
jobs. It's great, but at the same time, the risks of it, we have to weigh those out in consideration as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's important to remember that like people's livelihoods are on the line, and if they don't have other options, they don't have
Hmm.
other options, and we have to face that reality. Like if we don't want them to take on these jobs and what have you, these development projects that are bad for the
Hmm.
environment, and aren't working towards climate change goals, etc., then what do you want them to do? And we have
Yeah.
to work. That's where the just transition comes into play, and yeah, it's very complex,
Hmm.
and not to judge people who are on the other side of things and stuff. So,
Hmm.
um,
And I mean, it gets into the larger debates about nuclear energy in
yeah.
general. Is it a green technology?
Mm-hmm.
It is carbon neutral in the sense that it's not burning fossil fuels and stuff, but we also have to consider, the environmental and ecological concerns at both the front end of the nuclear cycle, the mining of uranium,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, um, Leanne Letty's Serpent River Resurgence. Most people know that. I've probably heard of that book in the last couple of years because so popular. But it's real concerns on the front end, and now we have these major concerns on the back end of the nuclear cycle as well.
Absolutely.
We just think of um, the power that it creates, but it does influence the environment like anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know here in Saskatchewan, I think the government just signed on to build, I don't remember what they're exactly called, like the mini nuclear
Yes.
reactors. And that's supposed to be, part of they're not divesting from fossil fuels, but
Hmm.
they will get into nuclear. And the
Yes.
politics are behind that and the issues. And it does divide people who consider themselves to be environmentalists for sure. Yeah, so yeah, this is such a great topic. We could talk forever
Oh
about it.
yeah. I mean,
uh,
yeah, the SMR thing. I mean, and that's again, we are, you know, we are at this moment. We are return like nuclear is coming back.
yeah.
It is back in the discussion. You know, I just saw there was a government of Ontario commercial the other day, and they made sure to really emphasize that Ontario is a nuclear province, and we are going to build up our nuclear infrastructure.
Mhm.
The SMRs, small modular reactors, again, those technologies are coming as well. They're not small, but they're buildings. They're big, but compared to these kind of post-war 1950s, monster kind of nuclear plants, it will change it, and people are considering how we can use more nuclear technologies in remote communities, mining areas, other places where we need to get high amounts of electricity into remote areas. So.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so I thought we'd wrap up today just talking a bit more about your own work and how this piece and this topic kind of fits into the broader research that you do on Canada's nuclear history.
I mean, a lot of my research was looking at nuclear energy in terms of its influence on shaping modernity. So, I mean, Canada, emerging out of the Second World War, was becoming itself, was becoming kind of this new and modern nation.
Mhm.
Separated from its tradition in kind of the British Commonwealth. And my argument and my research kind of argues that nuclear energy and kind of Canada's nuclear vision played into that kind of new nationalism, this emerging techno nationalism
Yeah.
that was appearing in the 1950s and 1960s. And again, it was seen as kind of this opportunity, not only to secure kind of the wealth of the nation because we have so much abundant uranium resources, but also just because these technocrats saw the future in terms of the importance of nuclear energy, and to be one of the earliest members in the nuclear club was important for them.
Mhm.
Um, and again, it just the question of nuclear waste just comes back to that larger question of where Canada is right now and what its kind of future goals are in terms of economies and in terms of the climate crisis, and also its larger place within in society and stuff, as a global leader. So.
Awesome. Okay, is there anywhere you want to point people to read more of your work or?
I mean, I don't have a lot of work. I mean, I honestly, if you haven't read my article on niche, it is a great starting point, kind of, to get into this question of nuclear waste. I need to put out a broader kind of paper that gets into these
Yeah,
gets into these questions. But
same with me.
um, yeah, I know I got no time. Um,
Life comes before that sort of thing at some point.
yeah.
Um,
I do have
um,
another
but
article just of interest on niche. It's about the voice of women and the baby teeth tests.
yes,
So it's another kind of side quest of Canada and nuclear energy, and some of the early work by the voice of women, who were focused on issues of the bomb and peace, but this shows kind of their early work in environmental history, and gets into that early work of kind of women and the bomb and environmental concerns, and it's a great little story about their work collecting baby teeth from all over Canada and the United States to test for radiation. So
yeah, I remember that piece. That was great. I'll
yeah,
post our stories. I'll post that in the Nuclear Nature series for people so they have access to it. And I want to thank you today for
oh,
joining me, Brandon.
thank you. It was great. Yeah, great to rediscuss this again. Yeah,
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, good luck with everything and
you
take
too.
care.
Thank you. Great series here.
Thanks.
Yeah.